All right, we got a repost this week of a conversation had last year with Juliet Starrett from San Francisco CrossFit. This conversation was part of a podcast season that my friend Brandon and I released called From Coach to Business, which was a practical guide on how to start and grow a fitness business, which we released, just in time for a global pandemic to completely upend the fitness industry. So pretty much perfect timing on our part with putting that out at the end of 2019. But this conversation with Juliet was focused on operations, and San Francisco CrossFit recently announced they had to close their doors due to COVID-19, which is really sad, honestly, right? The Starretts have been tremendous contributors to the broader CrossFit, functional fitness, what have you, ecosystem in terms of the content put out there in Mobility WOD, as well as, sort of like I said, the operational excellence of San Francisco CrossFit. So to see them have to shut it down based upon COVID is really sad. And I'm extremely empathetic to the plight of urban gym owners, right? Being a gym owner in downtown Chicago myself, I've seen the unique impacts that COVID has had on gyms in places like Chicago, like New York, like San Francisco, right? The large urban environments seem to have a much, much, much worse situation in terms of people essentially vacating downtown areas and the rents and cost of doing business being so very, very high in places like San Francisco. It's a pretty challenging situation with not a lot of clear paths forward. And the Starretts were essentially unable to get any sort of relief from the government, who is their landlord, based upon their situation with COVID, which, if we at South Loop Strength and Conditioning weren't able to get some sort of help from our landlords, we would be in a pretty similar situation. So, sort of broke my heart to see that, but wanted to revisit this conversation with Juliet to show that, the operational excellence of San Francisco CrossFit will be remembered. And if a global pandemic comes knocking, it's not always enough to do a fantastic job to be able to keep the business afloat. So check out this conversation with Juliet. Lots of really excellent takeaways, and San Francisco CrossFit, rest in peace. Welcome to the From Coach to Business podcast. I'm Todd. My friend Brandon and I have grown frustrated with the advice out there for coaches looking to start or grow their businesses. So we recorded some podcasts to help folks avoid some of the mistakes that we made when we were starting out. You can download our cheat sheet on starting and growing your fitness business at FromCoachToBusiness.com. It includes advice from our expert guests, as well as checklists and action items from each of our episodes. All right, so we are here with Juliet Starrett, owner of San Francisco CrossFit, talking about operations. So before we started recording, I made a joke about CRMs and software and all that kind of stuff. And Juliet said that San Francisco CrossFit doesn't have a CRM and has no marketing plan other than having a website and occasionally posting on Instagram, which, I think that someone who's a little bit skeptical or cynical could say, well, that's because you're one of the first affiliates and, you and Kelly are sort of celebrities within the CrossFit community, so who cares? But I do think that there is something to that in the sense that, if you're looking at business from the perspective of, okay, well, if you have sales and you have marketing and you have retention, and you're always trying to improve one of those pieces. If you're sort of saying, well, we're not really worried too much about the marketing aspect, that means that probably either the sales and or the retention are top of mind all the time and potentially best in class, right? So based upon some stuff that we've talked about and read previously, it sounds like retention at San Francisco CrossFit is one of the pillars that you lean on all the time. So we've thought a little bit about retention and its tie-in with operations, but I think that you have some pretty strong opinions about how operations are important to a fitness business and actually keeping clients.
Yeah, sure. And I have to digress a little bit to go onto the marketing thing. And because we've heard that a lot where people are like, oh, you guys are one of the first affiliates. So, you had it easy. You just grew. Well, there was a lot of years where we were still growing and trying to bring in new members, although most of that was done by word of mouth. But it's interesting because even though I think in like the broader CrossFit world, everybody knows who Kelly and Juliet Starrett are, our members seriously could care less and definitely did not come because of that. In fact, we have visitors come in and say, oh my God, to our members, like, you guys get to be coached by Kelly Starrett. And our members are like completely nonplussed and are like, I don't understand why you care. Like, we see this guy every day and actually he's kind of annoying or whatever. So I'll start by saying that, but to your actual question, I mean, you've hit the nail on the head. Like, our entire business strategy right now in this phase of our gym is on client retention. And that's what we focus like a huge amount of our effort on. Right now we have about 300, we waver between about 310 and 325 members. That's been sort of our sweet spot. We've actually learned that if we go up to 350 or 375 members, people automatically cull themselves out because our space honestly just isn't big enough to hold more members. And when people are relegated to having like a 2 foot by 2 foot area for their barbell, and they're, surrounded by other people, they start to feel kind of bummed. So, we have the numbers in terms of membership. So what we try to focus on is keeping our members there. That is our primary focus. And, if I could boil down our sort of, retention strategy, what we focus on is a couple of things. Now, we're known for and care a lot about really high quality expert coaching. And we have a really lengthy, long internship program. We have really high expectations of our coaches in terms of their coaching and understanding of movement and mechanics. They're decidedly not allowed to be workout administrators, which I wrote an article about a while back. But what we actually spend more of our focus on than the coaching piece is creating this, like what I call like a soup to nuts positive experience for our members. And the example I was giving to you guys and that we hear from a lot of our members is when they travel and go to other gyms, they don't ever say, oh, I didn't like the workout, or, oh, I didn't like the coach. What they always comment on is all the peripheral stuff. Some examples. Nobody responded to my email when I emailed about dropping in. There wasn't anything about dropping in on their website. I left a voicemail. Nobody responded to the voicemail. When I walked, this is a big one. When I walked into the gym, nobody said hello to me. When I started my class, nobody introduced themselves to me. I didn't know where to put my stuff. I didn't know where the bathroom was. I mean, it's all these things that we maybe sometimes forget to think about as business owners because what we're focused on is like, oh, we're fitness people. We got to get the people fit, really. But like often what people are judging their experience on is not actually the class, the WOD, the coaching. It's all that peripheral stuff. Is the gym clean? Are people nice to me? Because what we've noticed is that in this crazy busy world, and often people who have jobs don't have a place in their life where they get unconditional positive regard. And we have tried to make San Francisco that place where you come in the door, people know your name, you are encouraged, you feel welcomed even if you've never been in there before. You know what you're supposed to do, you know where you're going to put your stuff, you've been communicated with before you came in. You just, like we've done this. Really, we've worked really hard to sort of create a halo around all of our people who come in the door and really just make them feel welcome. One of the things we do, and we've talked about it a lot over the years, but it's a mandatory part of our class that our coaches have the athletes introduce themselves at the beginning of class. And I've seen this take on in some gyms, but not enough because I don't think people realize the value of that. I mean, we also have a lot of visitors, but on any given day, we have an athlete they've finished their on-ramp intro series and they're in their first real class. And the simple act of making everybody in the class introduce themselves and kind of become a tribe is really important I think, to our retention strategy.
I think that's really interesting because especially in a gym like yours that has 300 plus members, that could be really intimidating to a new member. Everybody else seems to know one another. Maybe there's some sort of cliques that have developed within this gym. And for a new person, that could be terrifying. And just opening the door from and introducing them to everybody else has to be a big part of building that early piece of community for a new member. So I really like that point. And to the thing you mentioned about the returning emails and voicemails, that sort of resonated with me because I had a gym outside of LA in a really crowded market for a long time. And honestly, I think my competitive edge, I felt like I'm doing all this training. I'm learning how to be the best coach ever. And I would do these debriefs with new clients, and I'd ask them why they signed up with us. And it was almost always the other people didn't return my phone call. The other people didn't email me back. And I was like, oh, well, shit.
I mean, how crazy is that? Because that is literally, I mean, I tell you, over 15 years of owning a gym and having my members traveling all over the globe, that is literally the number one piece of feedback. Like, oh, I tried to go to this gym in Nashville and nobody called me back or emailed me back. Or, I mean, this is like, over the years of running a gym, I have gotten that exact same piece of feedback like hundreds of times. And I super value in both my businesses. I really value responsiveness as a trait. And what I will say is that responsiveness is not natural to everybody. A lot of people cannot and have no way to manage their email and lose and can't keep track of emails or can't keep track of voicemails. And what I always say when I'm talking to new business owners, and I believe this to be true, that the single greatest asset you can have as a gym owner is self-awareness. And what I mean by that is if you appreciate starting a gym that one of your top priorities is responsiveness to new clients, whether that's email, voicemail, text, however it is you communicate with people, if that is your top priority and you know that you suck at that, then you need to hire someone immediately to do that for you. You can't just hope for the best. And if you look at your phone right now and your phone says 30,000 emails on your phone app, then that's a sign that you need to hire someone yesterday to be the person who is responsive. Now, fortunately, Kelly and I are like a dyad, right? So I'm the person who's responsive and Kelly can be out there coaching. And, we have this sort of there's two of us. And so we can divide and conquer that way. But I cannot emphasize enough that a lot, someone who's detail oriented, who actually likes and wants to nerd out on operations, and like maybe top of that list is able to be organized and responsive is like mission critical to, I think, both growing a gym and retaining. And I think, that was, I think, some of our early success, I really believe, is like what you said when you were in LA. Like our early success was, man, I responded to every email and every voicemail and every message we got for 10 years before we hired a manager. Like you heard from me directly.
Right.
And within like 5 hours. Not like 3 days later. Right. Like you heard from me that day.
Yeah, and I was just off the grid for the last week for 3 to 4 days, and I knew as soon as I turned my phone back on there was going to be some sort of problem. I was camping in Yosemite actually, and
lucky.
Yeah, right. The one thing that happened where I was like, oh God, this is a huge problem, is that I had set up, my email to have an autoresponder, said, hey, if you need something urgent, reach out to info@southloopsc.com. And, the person who was handling that in my absence got locked out of the account like immediately. And so
that's like that minute, that like moment as a business owner where you just kind of die on the inside because it's like, it's already done. You can't go back in time and fix it, but you just are like, oh God, I just died on the inside.
Yeah. Yes. But like worst case scenario, other than like an actual catastrophe in my brain, is like a bunch of people reached out and did not get responded to quickly. Like they had to wait 3 days, which to me is a catastrophe.
That is a catastrophe. Yes. Oh my God. I would have died on the inside. I'm so with you.
Yeah. But now we have the process of resetting the email password and everything fully documented. Everyone knows how to do it. Should be good in the future.
Well, isn't that how most policies, and especially when it comes to operations, come to pass, honestly, is when something gets messed up and then you realize, oh no, we actually need a policy for that. So, that's certainly how we've developed a lot of our systems over time, is by not realizing we needed a system and having an error happen and then realizing, oh, okay, if we don't have a system, this is going to be a repetitive error. So,
and that's the way I think you can tell how successful you're going to be, is how you respond to that error. When you say, oh crap, I guess we had an error, hope that doesn't happen again, versus, okay, let's put a system in place so that it never happens again, goes a long way. Yeah.
Right. You're exactly right.
So creating this environment that's very welcoming to new people and responding to emails, that I think that those are great first steps. But what do you do to continue with that and keep people in the first month or 2 months from just losing their initial excitement for fitness and falling off there?
Well, I think, again, we continue, like, even if you're not a new member, you're still introduced every single day. For our members, 15 years, they've been reintroducing themselves to the same people over and over again for 15 years. So that continues on. I have to add too, if I could go back in time a little bit, and this is very controversial in the CrossFit world, but we have a shirt on policy at San Francisco CrossFit. And I believe that this is an important way to make one's gym welcoming versus not welcoming. Over the years, I have been to so many CrossFit gyms where I walk in the door and it's so stereotypical. There's like 6 bros with their Reebok shorts on and their shirt off, and they're doing chest to bar pull-ups like it's their job in life. And like, if I am a 45-year-old mom, I am like, oh, well, this place is 100% not for me.
Right.
Turn around, walk out the door, And so we do some stuff just with the physical environment to try to make it more welcoming to people, because we really have a clientele that's like, kids all the way up to, we have a master's class where we have some 80-year-old athletes coming into our gym. So we really want to have a mind to make it feel welcoming to our most peripheral member, right? Like, if I'm going to look at my 80-year-old member and make sure that she feels welcome, what does that mean? And then, our coaches we don't actually have a formal way of doing check-ins with athletes, but our coaches are tasked with constantly checking in with their athletes and seeing what's up. We actually often, after people have been with us for a few months, we suggest that they jump into a couple private coaching sessions. Because what we've seen is a lot of people, they have a lot of these big gains in the first few months, and then they kind of plateau out and they get a little bit bored, or they plateau out and they think, oh shoot, I've been coming to this gym for 3 months and I still can't do a kipping pull-up. So we have our coaches trained that if they see an athlete who's struggling like with a particular skill over and over again in a class, that we try to steer them into a private coaching appointment to say, hey, I think if you meet with me for an hour after class, in a private appointment, and we just work on kipping pull-ups, then you're going to get your kipping pull-ups. And that is also really exciting for people because they're able to master a move that they've struggled with and then roll back into their class with all their friends and like crush a bunch of kipping pull-ups. So that keeps their enthusiasm alive. So we're always on the lookout for ways in which we can continue to help people develop as an athlete. And often that means steering them into private coaching. We also uniquely have an on-site physical therapy staff. So we can do a lot of work with injured athletes, and that helps us a lot. Now, I don't want to say that our business model is like we injure the people and then we feed them into our physical therapy program. That's not our goal. But as you guys know from owning a gym, it's like 90% of people who walk in the door of a gym have an injury. Mm-hmm. So I think that helps. We believe that helps with our retention, because if people have a tweak or an injury or their shoulder's tweaked or whatever, they're not like going to the physical therapy clinic across town and then kind of forgetting about us and then being like, okay, well, yeah, I did that, but I tweaked my shoulder. Well, it's like, it's all in-house for us, right? If you tweak your shoulder, we have someone on staff who can help you work through that and figure out how to carefully ramp you back into your programming. We also do like the typical CrossFit stuff where we have social events a couple times a year. We've been doing an in-house competition for years. We do it once a year in October called Virtuosity, which is an extremely fun event. It's only teams. We do an RX, a scaled, and then we actually have a costume competition, which is taken the most seriously of any of the categories. And the people who win the costume competition win the same level of prizes as like the RX people. So what we've tried to say is like, hey, we value fun as much as like how many pull-ups you can do. So I mean, people, it is hilarious the things like people will spend it's an entire day long and they keep their costume on. I mean, it is like truly a sight to behold, this costume competition.
I think being in San Francisco has to help elevate that to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
Let's get some specific examples.
I mean, there was a guy who was dressed up as Big Bird, like a full-on Big Bird with the full-on like hot hat, and he did all the workouts with the Big Bird hat on, and he's like, I'm dying in here, like snatching in a Big Bird. And then we've had a lot of superheroes, but a lot of superheroes with like full-on masks, and they're like, our gym's in the Presidio in San Francisco, Francisco. So they'll be like doing like the run part of a workout with their shield and their mask. And the people outside must be like, what is wrong with these people? So, we try to I think we really try to have like a light kind of fun environment at the gym. And that competition is just an example of it. We do some other social events through the year. So we try to, make sure people are connected and feel community. So we often do a taco social where we just bring a taco truck in and get like a keg of PBR or something, and everyone just comes in and socializes. Those are the kind of ways we like try to check in and make sure people are happy. We're also really responsive, again, like back to the responsiveness thing, to concerns, complaints, issues people have. Now, I'm definitely not of the mind that every customer is always right. But we take, if people actually take the time to give us feedback, we take that really seriously. And we assume that if one person has spoken up about it, there's probably a larger sentiment. So we try to show our members that we are responsive to what their issues, concerns, and needs are. And I think that keeps people around too. I think they know that if they feel bummed about something and speak up, something is going to change in the gym.
Can you give an example of a recent experience like that?
We actually had some of our masters ladies complain because we only had 2 kids barbells, like the 10-pound barbells. We only had 2 kids barbells, and the masters class often has like 12 different, athletes who are all over 60 to 80 years old. And, one of them took the time to say, hey, we're really sad because we just do not have enough of these certain kids barbells to be able to really do the things we want to do. And of course, I had no idea. That had never crossed my mind that they needed them. And the coach of our master's class hadn't brought that to my attention. And so we were immediately like, oh my God, no problem. Like ordered 8 kids barbells into the gym, like within a week. And they were all so happy and doing their like 10-pound, clean and jerks. And so it's just, it's that kind of thing where we're really always trying to be responsive to like things people want from an equipment standpoint, or, certain classes. Like we have a little powerlifting program at our gym. And that was actually started out of a request from a member that said, hey, we'd love to have a couple dedicated powerlifting classes a week. And so we have this little powerlifting program at our gym. So, we try to, within reason. I mean, on the same note, I've gotten a bunch of crazy complaints where people have said things, and I'm not thinking of an example where I'm like, okay, yeah, we're definitely not doing that. But more often than not, people are really well-meaning and they're just trying to solve a problem or give a suggestion. And we really try to, and we try to be, responsive, even if we're not going to make the change they suggest. We just want to make sure they know that we heard them. And if we're not going to do what they suggested, here are the reasons why. So we just feel like that level of communication with people and sort of making sure that they know that, we're always trying to improve and be better and listen to their concerns, I think also is yet another way people stick around.
Yeah. So making people feel like they're heard, helping connect people within community. I mean, I think a lot of people pay lip service to community, but don't actively do things to promote it. And you've outlined a few ways that you do that, being responsive, and then helping people feel like they're not ever really plateauing, but giving them some assistance so that they can always continue to feel like they're making progress. All of those sound like the themes that underpin your strategy for keeping members moving along and staying with your gym long term.
I have one other thing too, and I think this has become very commonplace, especially in CrossFit gyms, so I don't think it's amazing news, but I also really think like a really dedicated and well thought out on-ramp program for any type of CrossFit program is like mission critical. I mean, if it for most people, even though CrossFit's become so mainstream in many ways, things like doing anything with the barbell are so foreign to people. And, we always just really try to take it slow and make sure, our goal with any on-ramp program is for them to walk into a class. And if the coach says, okay, we're going to do split lunges and wall balls, that they know what those terms mean. And they have at least a basic passing ability to be able to do those things. And I think, for me, often it's that hurdle of like the first. I feel like if we can keep people in the door for like the first 3 classes after their on-ramp program, like we kind of have them for life. And not to say that we don't work to continue to retain them, but I think so much of what we do is about helping people get over their fear of belonging. So we spend a lot of time trying to make sure people feel that they belong and that they're welcomed. And then sort of their fear of the actual exercise program, whether it's CrossFit or whatever else it is, and making sure that they have a base level of confidence going into their first few classes where they don't just feel like a total outsider. Because I think, that's the beginning of the end. If they come into a class and they've already done this on-ramp and then they're like, oh my God, I didn't understand the terminology. I didn't understand the moves. I don't know how to do this. I'm totally lost and I'm too afraid to ask. So this is a horrible experience. So I think that's another really sort of key feature and something we really try to think about is like that first 30 to 60 days someone's with us. It's like, we're so focused on that.
Yeah. So, I think you guys have what sounds like a very well-oiled machine, which may seem or feel intimidating to a lot of new coaches. Have you guys been at a stage where you struggled to retain members? And just to give, maybe you guys could you could give a little background if the listener's not familiar with what your initial gym environment was like, the humble beginnings from which you began.
Yeah. Well, I will start by saying we've never, I'll generally answer the question that we've never really had a huge dip in our membership. We've been pretty steady, although we haven't, we've been in the 3 to 325 range for about 4 years now. So I will say our growth has been somewhat stagnant, and we believe that is largely because of our physical space, that we literally just cannot we can't fit that many people in at the key important, early morning and evening times. Mm-hmm. Although of course that's untested, but we've been kind of stagnant. I will start by saying that, we started our gym in 2005, literally in a parking lot outside, completely outside. All of our equipment was stored in a shipping container. So everyone would have to go in and out of the shipping container to get their weights or their rower or whatever. We offered the classes rain or shine. We had this little tarp awning thing, but not everybody could fit under it. The gym was also situated next to a bunch of dumpsters. So there was sort of this dumpster feeling to the whole place. But there was also, it also felt weirdly very special. And in a lot of ways, even though we're in this fancy space in the San Francisco Presidio, all of us who were there miss a lot of things about it. First of all, just being able to work out outside is amazing. We don't miss the rain and doing burpees in a puddle. There's certainly things we don't miss. And, it actually it wasn't that hard on our members, because they would come in and out for an hour to do a class. So even if it rained on them, they were fine. They could just go home. It was actually hard on our staff. They would be there, as like a gym staff is, they would be there from 5 o'clock in the morning until sometimes 8 o'clock at night. And, they just would get so cold that they could never get warm. And, Diane Fu was wearing 7 puffy, I didn't even know what Diane's body ever looked like, because all I ever saw her in was I was all these puffy coats. And then we finally got our actual physical space. I'm like, Diane, you're skinny. I had no idea. And so there were some challenges, but we certainly yes, we're an established gym, but, kind of like I said with the systems thing earlier, we did not hit the ground running. A ton of our operations and our systems have come to pass because we've made mistakes. It took me almost 8 years to actually hire a gym manager to help me out. And at that point, I was able to have a little more bandwidth to write policies. And, I didn't have an employee manual until 2012, for example. So a lot of this stuff for us was very progressive. And I think what I see in a lot of new gym owners now is it kind of what we talked about in the pre-roll, where gym owners think they need to come in the door with their perfect marketing strategy and CRM and their social media team and everything being perfect and all their policies perfectly into place and whatever. And I think that if our gym is any example, Kelly literally it probably illegally took out a $10,000 student loan, and we bought some barbells. And then when we had a plus in our bank account, we bought some more barbells. Wow. And, when we started San Francisco CrossFit, there was no Mind Body Wodify, those things didn't exist. So we had this weird system where we would accept checks and cash, but there was no real way to monitor whether we'd collected the right amount of checks and cash. So like we probably lost a ton of money over those first couple years until we got an actual membership software set up. But they literally didn't exist. Like you couldn't get one. There wasn't like a gym membership software on the market. So, so much of what we've done at San Francisco CrossFit is trial and error. And so, now it's like 15 years in, you can look at us and say, oh, these guys have it dialed and they have all their members and, all this, they've retained everybody. And it definitely, over the course of time, we have made so many mistakes and, we've made some members mad and they've left. And I mean, we've sort of had gone through all the pitfalls of both being new gym owners, new business owners, just sort of like getting our sea legs and learning how to run a business and manage a staff. And, so we are by no means perfect even now. And we certainly, this has been a process to get to where we are.
So speaking of mistakes and kind of being the operations nerd that you are, you mentioned one of the mistakes you see gym owners falling prey to is trying to be fancier than they need to be. Are there any other mistakes you think that are common with regard to retaining members or just operations in general that are just traps that maybe new gym owners should just avoid?
Well, I mean, I think, I'm really a fan of starting slow. I mean, obviously, I don't think the market would bear necessarily now another parking lot gym concept. But, Kelly and I both kept our other jobs for, 2, 3. I kept my regular job for 5 years of the first part of my business. Certainly there is a time and a place for like getting tons of investment and spending a bunch of money and having hot towels at your gym. But what I've learned over the years is a lot of that fancy stuff actually, again, is not why people come or why they stay. In fact, part of, I think, the beauty of the CrossFit experience is it's the anti-hot towel experience. And that it instead focuses its attention on really high quality coaching and a welcoming environment. I mean, I think if a gym has a space with some amount of equipment in it and some good coaching and a welcoming environment, all that other stuff is peripheral. And you can add it on over time, like after you get your sea legs and have some members in the door, like buy a little more equipment, then maybe get a CRM so you can start to increase, the amount of growth you have over time. And, I think there's a place for all that stuff, but that should not be, I fear that a lot of new gym owners think they have to have all that stuff in place to get started. And I 100% don't think you do. I think you have to have sort of the right vibe, right attitude, some high quality coaching going on, and like all that other stuff will come.
So I wanted to circle back to something you were talking about earlier in terms of the I guess intimidation and fear that new clients have, right? Because I mean, we're talking about stuff that people can kind of get wrapped up in, which would be potentially going too far down the rabbit hole of like coaching certifications and having the perfect program and all that kind of stuff, which there's a threshold of competency that you need to have, but most clients can't really tell the difference between, someone who has 39 certifications and someone who just like looks them in the eye and writes 5x5 back squat on the board. Right. Then we have all the details of like operations where someone could get wrapped up in, CRMs and email automation and all kinds of complexity with websites and things like that. But maybe you want to build those things over time, but that's probably not going to be the thing that actually matters. But when clients are getting started, it sounds like that the biggest barrier that you find for them is just like intimidation, discomfort, being unsure of themselves. Is that accurate? Is that what you see as the biggest barrier to clients actually sticking around when they get started?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's crazy to me because CrossFit's been around so long, and when we first started, no one had even heard of it. And now, of course, everyone's heard of it. But it does still carry with it for the vast majority of our new clients, a little bit of a fear factor. And I think it's not necessarily like the media attention or whatever CrossFit's gotten over the years, but I just think it's some of the actual movements that we do on a regular basis in CrossFit for your standard gym owner are intimidating. And, just even the look and feel of a gym. I mean, imagine if you've been going to 24-hour fitness with ellipticals and whatever, and then you walk into this space and you're like, wow, I don't even recognize this kind of environment even feels strange and, sort of outside my comfort zone. So yeah, I mean, I think, your explanation of it and sort of the recap is exactly how I feel. I mean, I really think figuring out how to make people feel welcome, and make sure they feel comfortable with the programming and the methodology of the classes and know what to expect is so important in having them stick around after their first couple classes. So important. And I agree with you, especially for the newest clients. It's like what the workout is, everyone gets all crazy about their super ninja programming. And I'm like, oh man, at this point you can go on the internet and find 5,000 programs of CrossFit. And I'm sure they all work pretty well, right? I don't know. At this point, I'm like, I don't know. There was a while where I felt like there was this real growth in programming and some people were doing a better job than other people. And now I'm like, I think a lot of people are doing a lot of pretty good, general physical preparedness type CrossFit programming, and not sure new clients really care that much about that. We do have some legacy clients who care more. And that's another thing we did to keep them around is we actually have a couple classes that we call CrossFit Sport. And they're kind of they're for our more advanced athletes who are working on more advanced skills like muscle ups and handstands and so forth. So we wanted to create a space for those people. But yeah, I mean, I think, I just cannot emphasize enough how much those first few weeks we have with people, making them feel comfortable and learning the skills, and making them, feel part of our community, even in some way, and back to the thing you said about, setting up your CRM or whatever. I mean, I think a lot of gym owners would do well to make it their mission to when they're at the gym, say hello to every single person who walks in the door. To me, that is worth way more money and time in the end than setting up a CRM. Go to the front door when anyone walks in and go say hello. And ideally, maybe even know their name. But even not know their name, but just get away from your computer, walk up to the front door of your gym and say hello to the people that are walking in. To me, that's gold.
Yeah, there's an element of disconnection that people can have that might be difficult for an owner or a coach to see because they're there and they sort of feel comfortable and they know people. And it can be really challenging to understand how out of place people can feel in an environment like that. And that especially if you're new, if you feel out of place, it's not even necessarily a decision to quit where you're like, I've had enough. I don't like this place anymore. It's you're just not totally bought in. You're not totally comfortable and you get sick or you travel for work or you pick up a new project and you kind of don't come for 2 weeks and you just don't feel a pull to come back. Right. And then you're gone.
Well, the other thing I would recommend, and I've been doing this over the years that I recommend for literally every single gym owner, is go be a client. Go be uncomfortable yourself, because I do this all the time. Like Orange Theory opened up and I'm like, I'm going to go to Orange Theory and then I'm going to go to Barry's boot camp and then I'm going to go to Soul Cycle and I'm going to go to this spinning class and that spinning class. And it's super interesting for me to go to that because I actually can experience a little bit of what it's like to be a new client. I mean, first of all, I go to school on their systems, right? How was it for me signing up for their class and how was their communication? What was my experience like? So I kind of go to school on them as I come in the door for their class. And then I'll be honest, I mean, maybe you guys don't feel like this, but anytime I go to any new fitness class where I know no one, I feel kind of nervous. And I even laugh to myself because I'm like, why am I nervous going to Soul Cycle? This is ridiculous. Like I was like, I could, bicep curl the 2-pound weight all day long while I spin. I got this, but I still I don't know anyone. I don't know the systems. I don't know where I'm supposed to get on my bike, and so I feel like that is something I've try to do over the years. I go to other CrossFit gyms, and not just CrossFit gyms though, because, now there's so much other kind of fitness. I can't recommend enough any new or old gym owner, just go be a client. And it's such a good reminder of, this is what you think. I always think to myself, this is what every one of our members feels like coming in the door, that nervousness. Will I belong? Am I going to know how to get on my bike and adjust my bike? And I'm going to have to ask for help? And is that going to be awkward? And, all the sort of like insecurities we all go through as humans. I think it's a really good reminder to go put yourself in that position at other gyms and just be anonymous. Don't come in and be like, I'm so-and-so from so-and-so. You just be like random client and just go to school on their systems, learn what you can, and then like use it as a reminder for what your clients are experiencing.
I think that's an excellent suggestion, especially when you take in mind what Todd said, that it's so easy to be comfortable in your gym and assume that's how everybody else feels. So to try to step outside of that, and the best way to do that is just to go into some other fitness experience and see how that feels, and then just notice what you're noticing and appreciate that new people walking in your door are going to feel that way. And how can you mitigate that? I think that that's powerful stuff. So I think I really like that suggestion.
Thanks.
Yeah, I would say that it's pretty remarkable to think about that level of discomfort that you might feel, or that I experience the same thing. If I travel and I drop in, like I'm uncomfortable. I'm like, where do I put my stuff? Is it okay to use this barbell? Right. Is everyone looking at me? Like, what's going on? It's like, I'm like,
right. When you say it out loud, you're like, wow, we're all crazy because nobody cares. And like, of course, it's just, but it's true. Like everybody has all those like looming questions anytime they do anything new. So, and I even feel like that at CrossFit gyms, and I'm like, man, I've been doing CrossFit for 15 years, but I still am like, new place, new system. What do I do?
Yeah. And everyone is like definitely staring at me.
Right.
Definitely looking at me.
You know what's funny is we have a bunch of our members from San Francisco CrossFit, because we're kind of known as like the movement and mechanics gym, that our coaches are all experienced, and we like we really work on teaching people to move well. So a lot of our members actually, when they travel, they specifically do not say they're from San Francisco CrossFit, because they worry that they're going to be expected to like be really good at moving, and they're like, I'm terrible at snatching. And so they actually go out and like anonymously go to CrossFits and don't tell people. And I'm like, you guys, nobody cares, but it's funny.
They don't pack their t-shirt from your gym just to be sure.
No, they just go in there and they if someone asks where they CrossFit, they lie and say some other CrossFit. And I mean, it's a funny psyche that's developed.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. It's like, yeah. So you CrossFit, where do you train at? And they're like, San Francisco CrossFit. They're like, how's your mobility then? How's your mobility?
Right. Like, let's see you. Let's see your
squat's not so good, huh?
Yeah. Let's see your ass to grass squat. And then they're like judging the person, and they're like, wow, Kelly Starrett is not doing a good job.
Yeah. Where's your ankle dorsiflexion? Oh, haven't been doing your band drills, huh? Where's your band now?
Yeah, exactly. So they just avoid all that by like outright lying and or not saying anything.
It's like, that's so good. I think there's slightly different, but a lot of people who play in bands, if you're traveling potentially for like a show or something, and like someone starts asking you questions, and like they're like, oh, like, what's your band called or whatever, they'll just have like a fake name of the band, because it's like, I don't want to tell you the real name.
Right.
I don't want you to look it up. If my band is named something offensive, like dying fetus or
right. And then that just
like,
just like ends the conversation right there. They're like, oh, okay, weirdo. And they turn and walk away. Yeah. And really they're like the lead singer of Metallica or something, but they've just like fended off everybody.
Yeah. It's like, we're not going to go down this road. Well, so talking about this concept of just like, making people feel comfortable. One of the reasons that we even wanted to have you on as a guest for this episode is from the book called Never Lose a Customer Again by Joey Coleman. And there's a whole chapter in that book focusing on San Francisco CrossFit. The book is actually pretty good in general for just like concepts of retention and understanding client touch points and how different industries actually handle these issues of people, flaking out, being unreliable, being nervous, not getting what they thought they paid for, et cetera. And that book sort of focuses on the concept of integrating people into the gym's community and social events. So can you give us a rundown of what that process looks like for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, we, again, I've said this kind of over and over again, but like we really are super focused on that first 30 to 60, 90 days with people, like making sure that they come in the door and feel comfortable. And again, we don't just abandon them after 90 days. But, first of all, we have a really welcoming staff, and people are always, welcomed and introduced at the door. And then we have a bunch of different ways we communicate with people. So, we really try to make sure that everybody knows what's going on. We have like a TV that shows our upcoming events, and we have a newsletter. We have a newsletter that we don't just spam out to people across the world. Like, we send only information about specific upcoming events or competitions people might want to do. So we really just try to have sort of like an internal newsletter situation going on, where we send that out bi-weekly with information about what's going on at the gym. It's always posted in multiple locations at the gym, so people really know what to expect. And then we've also, over the years, kind of started doing like the same events over and over again. So we always do our competition in October. We always do a Cinco de Mayo taco social. We always do the last workout of the open. We always do as a Friday night lights event. So we do it on Friday night. We put people into heats. We get a taco truck and beer for after. So we have these kind of set events. So at least our current members they kind of know what to expect, what's coming in. And then we've also done some other community events, like not all 300 of us, but a bunch of us went and did a Spartan race at the San Francisco AT&T Park. And we've done like a stand-up paddle clinic with one of our members who owns a paddle shop. And, we had some members come to that. So, we've tried to do like one-off community events over the years, competitions, just plain social events, and, just try to keep people connected. And, there's always a certain crew. I mean, in a 320 member gym, there's probably going to be 200 people who could care less about socializing with people at their gym, right? But there's always going to be a core crew of like, 100, 150 people who it's like their gym is their community, and they're like going to come to every single taco social and come to every single event. And then we also do have plenty of members who are just like, like we kind of have this, we started a 3:30 class because we had an investment banker crew of guys who wanted to, they work bankers hours in San Francisco. They're done with work at like 2:30, and they wanted to like come do a class at 3:30 and then go home to their families. And, these aren't the kind of guys who come to our like Friday night taco social, right? Like they experience the gym for other reasons. But we definitely have a core crew of people who love the social events. One of the things that's been amazing for me, and like maybe our greatest source of pride running a gym for this long, is to see the level of connection people have. I mean, there's probably been like 9 gyms that have spawned from our gym, from our coaches or members who've left us and opened gyms. And then there's probably been like 20 marriages where people have found each other at our gym and married. And then, my Facebook feed's always amazing because I see all these different groups of people from my gym who all are like out at a concert together and socializing out in the world. And so for me, I don't know that there's anything we did actively to create that other than sort of hold open the doors of a space for people and make them feel welcome and included. And then they obviously develop their own friendships and do things with each other outside of the gym. And for Kelly and I, that's been one of the like greatest sources of pride, is to be able to watch all that happen. It's like we obviously have felt proud when we've had like games athletes and teams, but for us, like seeing how we've created this, open the door to this random space with some barbells in it, and it's created all these like lifelong friendships with people. And that to me is like so meaningful.
Yeah. So I think that the idea of just understanding like what your clients are potentially looking for out of the gym, right? That, like you mentioned, that there's some folks who are, they're there for a workout and they want to come in, get their training in, go home. And there's other people for whom the community is a huge component of what is actually important to them about being in the gym. And there's different dynamics in an urban environment compared to maybe like a suburban environment or a more rural environment. There's also differences between like scales of gyms that I've seen as well, just like in our own growth in South Loop, that like, the way that membership felt and the way that gym members related to like the community as a whole is different at 100 members than it is at 150 members, than it is at 220 members, and it is at, nearing 300 members or over that, right? That's all like a pretty different scale of what's going on. And I wanted to go back to the idea that you talked about internal communication. I think that's something that is dramatically underrated as far as just like retention and just overall goodwill within the gym, right? That a lot of people, especially once you hit like a certain number of people in the same space are prone to conspiracy thinking and thinking that there's like certain cliques that are out to get them, and that this person doesn't like this person, and that, you know, ownership is doing this to screw you over, and like this class time is like being taken away because this person, and you're just like, whoa, like what in the world is going on? So, you know, that actual concept of like actively and proactively and aggressively communicating all the time, I think is really important. So I'd like to dig into that a little bit more. I mean, you mentioned a bi-weekly newsletter. Is that something that you did all the time, or did you do that sort of like reactively to realizing that people had no idea what was happening?
Well, I mean, I will start with the caveat by saying that we're still amazed when we announce something 17 times on Instagram, send multiple newsletters, and inevitably there's still the guy who's like, well, you know, like, you know, we have this thing where we close the gym only 2 weekends a year to host a course, right? And inevitably there's the guy who, like, literally, I'm not exaggerating, guys, we post like starting 10 weeks in advance of closing the gym for one day, on Instagram 47 times, like 8 newsletters. It's on the TV at the gym, cycling 24 hours a day. And literally there's a guy who calls and he's mad and he's like, I was going to come to open gym today, and you guys, like, I didn't know the gym was closed. And he's like super irate. And I'm literally like, So, I mean, I'm not, our communication system is not foolproof. I will say that. And I don't know that anybody's is.
We have the same experience. And I'm like, sir, I can pull up your Infusionsoft client record and show that not only did you open this email, but you clicked on the link to the thing that we're talking about 5 times. You clicked on it every single time we sent it out. Like, your click-through rate is 100%. Like, what's going on?
Oh my God, that's so hilarious. That's so hilarious. Yeah. So, I mean, I think, no, we didn't always send out really regular communications. That's been that really kind of started once I had a gym manager in place and it wasn't just me doing everything. So just having another human to help sort of create that and get the word out. And then, you know, again, I'm just like a broken record, but I go back to when I'm talking about internal communication, you know, like I have a gym manager who is incredibly responsive and values responsiveness. So even if people haven't gotten a message, if they, you know, even for current members, if they inquire about anything, they're going to get a response to their email same day that they email, which I think, again, I'm like a broken record on this responsiveness thing. And that's probably the only thing anyone's going to remember from this podcast, but I'll be okay with that. So, I mean, yes, we're putting communications out into the world, and then we're really focused on making sure that any incoming communications are always dealt with, managed, responded to. And, you know, and again, like we're announcing things on Instagram and Facebook, and, you know, if we have an event, it's certainly going up on all our social platforms and via newsletter and so forth. But again, it's not foolproof. Like, you know, people sort of, you know, like the vast majority of people open and see and know the gym is closed, and there's always going to be like a couple people who just don't get it.
Yeah. So something that I've noticed is that as we've grown in membership numbers, that below a certain number of people, like everyone feels like they're part of one community, right? It's like, we are the South Loop strength and conditioning community. And then once there's more than a certain number of people, then it starts to splinter and fraction, right? That there's the weightlifters, there's the 6 a.m. class, there's the 5 a.m. class, there's the more competitive people, there's the banking bros, right? That it's like, there's these little sub communities, which I think is totally fine. And sometimes there can be conflict or drama between those different groups. And certainly in the past, when we haven't done as good of a job of managing it, that there have been some issues that, you know, caught me off guard, where I was like, whoa, you people don't like each other anymore. Okay. Like that's, that's a new problem. But something that I've thought about is, how do you actually allow people to have their own smaller groups within a larger group, but still identify as part of a big picture group where they see themselves as on the same team and not necessarily in competition with each other? Have you found anything to be effective with that?
Well, I mean, I have some comments on that. You know, I will start by saying that I highly recommend Sebastian Junger's book, Tribe. It's a short little book. I don't know if either one of you guys have read it, but it's great.
Yeah, it's really good.
And, you know, he basically says that you can't really know more than 100 people. And that really resonated with Kelly and I when we read that, because when we had 100 members at San Francisco CrossFit, it felt like this tight community. Kelly and I knew every single member's name. We knew what they did for a living. We were all tight. Like, we did feel like this sort of one. And And it was early CrossFit. So we had this real sense of belonging to being part of this emergent phenomenon that was CrossFit. And, there was sort of this pride connected with that. And then once we got to like 150 and 200 members, like we actually had some members leave. That was one of our like early sort of blow ups where we had like 25 members leave to go to another gym because they wanted that small vibe and feel. And they felt like as the gym grew and those kind of factions created that it was no longer really their spot. And they've probably had to bounce around because they probably went to another gym and then that gym grew, right? Like the problem is of course, I think 100-person gym is like the ideal gym, having had one once. But of course, the business problem with that is like you don't make any money with 100-person gym, so you need to be growing to a bigger size gym.
It's like, we can have 100-person gym, but you all get to pay $700.
Right, exactly, right. Like if that we could do that, but it would be exactly $750 a month, at least in San Francisco. I mean, maybe in like Tulsa, Oklahoma, you can have a 100-person gym. So again, it's all a matter of scale. But I actually just lost sight of the original question. What was it?
Yeah. So it was along those lines of, how do you try to keep people feeling like they're on the same team, given that they are going to form their own little cliques or factions within the larger gym?
Yeah, I mean, I do think a lot of those cliques and factions are unavoidable, and we have exactly those that you're talking about. We have like the competitor people that go to our sport class. We have this diehard 5:30 a.m. crew of people. We have the nooners that have been, we have some nooners that have been coming to our gym. Like there's 4 or 5 people in our noon class that have been coming literally for almost 15 years to the gym. Then exactly, we have the investment banking guys in the afternoon, and then we have the Olympic lifters, right? So we definitely are with you. Like we have the factions. And our only real way to combat any sort of infighting about that is to try to have whole community events. Like our in-house competition, Virtuosity, is great for that because it's 4-person teams. And we actually end up having to pair people often with people that they don't know because, we have to take like a 6 p.m. guy and put him with a 5:30 a.m. girl because they, both of them want to compete but don't have a team. And so that's actually a fun way for us to bring people together and have a meet. But you're right. It is an ongoing challenge because, we definitely have people who like 5:30 a.m. they're friends with each other. They hang out outside of the gym and they've literally never seen some of the people at 6 o'clock. So our only answer to that is really to try to have some whole gym events where people actually are forced to interact with other people. One of the main ones we do is our in-house competition. And that always is, and it's actually great for me too, as the owner, because again, going back to that 100-person thing, the last time that I knew everybody's name at my gym was when we had a 100-person gym, and that was like in 2008. I just my brain cannot keep track of everybody's name. And also, I'm often there more like bankers hours, like business hours, 9 to 5. So I miss some of the morning and evening people. So those events are really important for Kelly and I too, to just make sure people to see us and know we exist and that we're actually there and get a chance to meet new people who've come in that we haven't had a chance to meet yet. So, I don't know that that's the only way to combat the factioning, but it's definitely a thing. We have some factions. Fortunately, for the last couple of years, we haven't had any faction infighting. It's been very low drama at San Francisco CrossFit, and I'll take it.
Yeah.
I think, you mentioned the social events and those are great. And then you also mentioned doing things like having people get together and do a Spartan race or something. And that was an approach that we used at my gym, which was to have these things that we called like sporting Sundays like once a month. And it was sort of applied fitness where we'd all get together and play ultimate frisbee or something,
right,
something like that. And it was a great way to bring everybody together. And when you're doing something like ultimate frisbee, you have fun together. Like everybody just sort of bonds a little bit through
fun.
that. Yeah.
I think there's so many creative ways that you can, bring people together. And that I'm sure other people are doing even, I love the Sporting Sundays idea, love the in-house competitions. We've never gotten there's always, CrossFit competitions around everywhere. And we've never gotten a ton of traction from our members wanting to do a lot of those. They have done some over the past. The other thing I wanted to mention that I believe at least plays a role in our community feeling at our gym is probably like 70 years ago, we stopped writing people's times on the board. We just don't do that anymore.
Oh, yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. And I actually, it's strange to me now when I go to a gym and I have to end my workout and be like, 7 done, Juliet done. And then they're, the coach is over there writing. Like it's we used to do that. Of course, it was like what everybody did. But then we realized we're like, I really who cares? Who cares what my time is on random X programmed workout by random programmed person? Like, who cares? So, we definitely feel like that's like one of the many factors we have in like, again, trying to eliminate this competitive vibe. You got to wear your shirt. It doesn't matter how awesome you are at chest to bar pull-ups. Like you're in here to get your best workout for you, whatever that means. And that's kind of what we value. So, I forgot to add that on earlier.
Yeah, no, I completely agree on the times thing. I think that that's something that that there is value at some level of understanding what your capacity is on a certain type of workout relative to other people, right? That can be motivating for some individuals, that you can understand where your strengths and weaknesses lie, that's all like good stuff. But I think for like the top and the bottom of people, that it has like a very perverse incentive, right? That you get people shaving reps to try to beat people. You get people trying to do things as
cheaters.
Yeah, right. And you're like, why are you doing that? Like, I can see you. I'm watching you do this.
Right. Yeah. It's so hilarious. Yeah. There's been those people over the years too. Yeah. Well, you guys will appreciate that Kelly's taken the pendulum like so far to the other direction that he and I are always having like a little mini tiff about it, because his latest thing is he just wants to like do a workout until he doesn't feel like doing it anymore. And I am like I generally am like a way more structured person than him, And so he and I will do a workout together and I'm like, well, okay, so we're going to do this and this and this. And I'm like, well, for how long? Or like, when's it going to be over? And how long are we going to do that? And he's just like, well, whenever you feel that, your performance is going downhill. And so this drives me crazy, because while I totally agree that you don't want to like have this crazy competitive thing where people are cheating on their reps and whatever, you don't necessarily want the Kelly Starrett way, which is just like, when I feel my performance go down, I'm going to stop my workout. I'm always like,
When the spirit moves you, spirit moves you to switch from rowing to wall balls.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, that's like, Kelly's latest thing. He'd probably get mad if I described it, if he knew I described it as his latest thing, but it is kind of funny. It's an ongoing debate we have. I'm like, I at least need like an amount of reps or an amount of time to do this in. I was like, I don't need to write it on the board. I don't need to share it with anyone. I need some kind of parameters.
It's like AMSAP, as much spirit as possible or something.
Right, exactly. Oh my God. Yeah,
that's go with the flow.
Go with the flow. Exactly. That's like the guy who's like, that's from the guy who's been like CrossFitting since 2003, So when you guys will probably really relate to that at some point.
It's like you just start hanging too loose. You're just like, I can't stop throwing the hang loose sign and just switching exercises whenever I feel like it.
It's so hilarious. Anyway, I digress on Kelly and his workout plan.
Great. Well, I think that, to summarize a lot of the stuff that you talked about, I mean, you've nailed responsiveness as being key. This concept of understanding, what new clients are potentially concerned with, which is not necessarily all the gory details of programming and progression. It's not necessarily a bunch of amenities and things like that. It's much more an emotional feeling of whether or not they fit in and belong, and whether or not they're intimidated. Is there anything else that you think is super important as far as like what matters for retaining, especially new clients? Like you mentioned, they're very fragile over their first like 30, 60, 90 days.
This is going to sound really pedestrian, but I was thinking of it as we were talking earlier. Actually keeping the gym really clean. This may sound silly, but over the years and recently, I've actually been in some kind of like dirty looking CrossFit gyms that just look messy and dirty. And again, there's going to be a certain subset of members who actually likes and seeks that out because they're looking for like the hardcore garage gym experience. But at least for us in San Francisco, where we've got a lot of fancy people like investment bankers and tech people and otherwise, like, we have to, I think, pay special mind. And I honestly think every gym member should. You just like, you want that feeling when someone opens the door and walks in to have it feel organized and look clean. So I realize that's a really pedestrian suggestion, but I think you can't underestimate sort of that first impression.
Yeah, I think there's something really interesting there that I've been thinking about a lot, because I think my first impulse with a lot of stuff like that is like, oh, it's just details. It doesn't matter. Like the big picture matters more. Like, are people getting better over time? Do they have a good relationship with the coach? Do they feel like they're part of the community? Like that's what actually matters. And, in terms of priorities, like I would probably say that those things do matter maybe more than like cleanliness, but that there's an aggregate customer experience that I think is really, really important. And it's difficult to put your finger on exactly what the thing is. Is it whether or not the plates are stacked? Like, I don't know. Is it whether or not you actually like, clean the floors 3 times a week or 5 times a week? Like, I don't know what the thing is, but there's definitely a threshold of customer experience that if you're better than that, people notice. And if you're worse than that, people have a problem. And it makes it easier for them to flake out.
I think you're exactly right. I mean, none of these things in and of themselves are going to retain a member. And I think you're exactly right. It's like, if you think of it as like a pie, and each of it is a piece of the pie that has to fit in. And also I think certain things matter for other people, right? Like you might have a subset of 25 members who like really matters to them that their gym is clean. And then there's another subset of members that it really matters to them that they're acknowledged the moment they walk in the door, right? But you're never going to know what really sort of like speaks to people and makes them feel welcome and feel stoked to give you $250 a month. I think those things often are very different for different people, but assuming you have all those types of people in your gym, I think it is important to pay attention to all those details, the coaching, the programming, the progression, the communication, the responsiveness, the cleanliness of the gym, unfortunately it's a lot of things, but I think it really still is really the most basic stuff, right? Like marketing is not one of those pieces of the pie, for example, right? Like it matters and it's important to grow a gym, but I would put it like as peripheral to what that sort of aggregate client positive experience is.
Yeah, it's like you need a series of net positive experience to achieve escape velocity for this client to then be bought in on you and your gym's experience. And you don't know what those things are in the beginning. It could be the cleanliness. It could be the community. It's any number of handful of things. And once they get some momentum with that, then they start to be a part of your gym. They're integrated, and then they know that what you provide is a quality service. They understand all that stuff later, but in the beginning, none of that really matters.
Right.
Yeah, you have to reduce the friction of them actually getting to that point.
Exactly. Yeah. I think you're right. Reducing, I love the thinking of it as reduce the friction, just like make sure people know what they're supposed to do and feel welcomed and, don't feel like the place is a shithole, and that they know who their coach is and what movements they're supposed to be doing. And right. Like it's all this really basic stuff, but I think getting that stuff dialed in far outweighs some of the other peripheral stuff that I think a lot of new gym owners sometimes feel like they have to focus on. Like I've got Instagram 6 times a day and Facebook this many times. And, some of that stuff I'm like, okay, yeah, that's important. And that should be part of like phase 2. Right. But phase 1 is like dial in this stuff that we've been talking about throughout this podcast. Dial in that stuff. Make sure you're a student. Go experience other gyms. Be responsive. Be welcoming. Say hello to everybody. Like just do all that basic stuff. And then once you're like good and have made that like natural in a system, then yes, go like add a CRM and have a Facebook social media marketing person join your team and, whatever it is. I think those things can come as like phase B.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that there's like you mentioned that putting things in the proper order is really important. And that, as we talked about previously as well, like depending on how many people you have in the same space, right, that the people's expectations will change. That, 100-member gym, like we talked about, like people are going to give you more of the benefit of the doubt when there's 100 people, right? That they're like, oh yeah, it's like a small group. Everyone's getting along. They can probably see you as, potentially a gym owner, sort of just like busting your ass and trying to keep your head above water. So they're like, yeah, like he's trying real hard. So it's okay that like this thing is kind of messed up. But then at a certain point, people actually have expectations of like, why isn't this place clean? Like, why isn't my email responded to? Right. Why are the plates messed up? Like, why is there chalk on the floor? Why are we out of chalk again?
Right.
And that there's a tipping point where you no longer have the benefit of the doubt, and that being in front of that is definitely a good idea. You don't want to hit that point and then suddenly realize that you don't have the benefit of the doubt anymore, and people are mad at you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that sums up probably why, anyone who's ever left our gym is, if they've ever left for being mad, it's because they sort of accumulated a list of grievances, that we weren't aware of and we didn't address. And then, by the time we did address and become aware of them, it was too late. Right. And so, I think you're exactly right. It's just sort of like staying in front of the details so that they don't come to bite you later.
So I got one last question. Do you guys actually track your retention?
We do. Yeah, we actually track our retention. I actually meet with my manager once a week. We have a set, always scheduled meeting, and we go over a lot of gym metrics during that time. So numbers of members, member retention, because we sort of have an established number of members, it's actually easy for us to go like one by one through whose memberships are coming due. Do we know if like this guy really needs some massaging to continue his membership, or we know for sure he's just going to re-up. So we can actually go person by person through some of our members and sort of, figure out an actual individual strategy for communicating with them about membership changes, upcoming members. And so, we track retention, we track our membership. We keep track of like our big spenders is another thing we keep track of, because we have a really big private coaching business. So we keep track of our big spenders and try to give them like a free t-shirt or a $50 gift card, or, we definitely try to kind of track those metrics, because we want the people who are spending, $1,000 a week or $1,000 a month at our gym to like know that we notice.
And sorry to interrupt on that, but when we actually started like really tracking that, and like, you have an idea of like the personal training clients who are spending more because they're buying personal training. But when we started really associating all the purchases with a specific client, there are certainly a few people who jumped out who I was startled by, where it's like, whoa, you buy like 3 t-shirts a month and a Fit Aid and a protein packet, like literally every day.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
wow,
I think, that, it took, I didn't start I wasn't even aware that I could track the big spenders until like 3 or 4 years ago. And then when I did, I was like, wow, this is so interesting. You're exactly right. Because there's some unexpected people who literally like anytime we have a new t-shirt, they buy it. And, they bought every one of Kelly's books and a mobility product. And, and then on top of that, they come to private coaching 3 times a week. And they've been doing that for 10 years, and then we also keep a little metric on our like scrolling TV where we have how many classes people have attended over time, like in the like we'd usually do it by month. So it'll be like May, and we put people's names with how many classes they've attended. So we kind of try to shout out like people who've been coming and using their membership a lot and attending a lot of classes. But yeah, we definitely track all that. We try to really like, massage any members who we think might have one foot out the door by reaching out and communicating, or, giving them a free t-shirt or whatever it is, and fortunately, because, if we do that week by week, there's not a huge, right. If we did it like once every 6 months, we'd have this list of like 25 members who left, 25 members who joined, and we wouldn't really be able to do any sort of individual communication with them. But because we do it on a week by week basis, it's usually only like 3 to 5 people we're talking about whose memberships are coming due that week or in the next couple weeks, who we think through the grapevine might be thinking of leaving, or, whatever host of issues we see going on with those people. And then we can reach out to them individually.
And have
you found the free t-shirt to be effective? Because I think that's something that's tricky, is that, there's a lot of advice of like, hey, you should reach out to people who you notice haven't been coming. And then inevitably you try it. You're like, hey, notice you haven't been coming. They're like, oh yeah, I meant to quit. And you're just like, oh, well, I just lost 5 members. Like that was stupid.
We've done that a few times too, where we have like someone who's like paying us a membership but never coming. And then we like alert them to that, and then they quit, and we're like, oh God. Yeah. So, but in the end, of course, none of us want to be taking someone's money who's not using our service, but still, I feel like for our big spender types, the t-shirt or some kind of acknowledgement of the spend has been effective. And I think people feel very stoked about that. I think for people who've left and we're trying to encourage them to come back, usually a t-shirt doesn't do the trick. But we have had some success having people come back by offering them like a pretty deep discount for the first, 3 to 6 months. They, if they come back and commit to 6 months or a year, we give them a deep discount. So the actual, an actual money investment in getting someone to come back is way more effective for us than like giving them a thing. But I think the big spenders and people who are current members, like they feel I think just the simple acknowledgement that we're saying like, Hess, we see you, we see that you're investing a lot of money into our business. We appreciate you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Are these metrics that you track, the big spender and the retention, is that primarily through whatever software you guys use to manage your membership at your gym? Or are you guys doing this in a spreadsheet or what?
No, we track it through we actually use MindBody still from the very beginning of time. And we track it through that.
Gotcha.
Right.
Todd, do you use software to track?
Yeah. Well, I wasn't kidding in the pre-roll about what we do, which is extreme and bizarre. And actually something that I've been working on for probably like the last 6 to 9 months, which is like a process of like educating myself on a lot of technology as well. But we have a bunch of different systems, and I set everything up to dump into one spot. So like our gym management software is Zen Planner. We use Infusionsoft for like email. We use Acuity Scheduling for scheduling appointments. We use Square for some types of retail, and all that stuff goes into Airtable and associates with a client record. And then we can like filter all those different views and like manipulate that data. And then I also recently set that up to be visualized in Tableau. So we have like dashboards and viewing stuff. So again, this is like bizarre.
You are like my kind of guy, because I could go deep nerd with you on that as well. Yeah. I love that stuff. Kelly would literally sooner die than even engage in this conversation about like connecting all these platforms, Airtable and Tableau. But I love it. I love it.
I'm sort of envisioning, what's that movie with Tom Cruise with the precogs? Where they detect the crimes before they happen?
Minority Report.
Yeah, Minority Report.
That's a great movie.
You like wake up in the morning, this marble comes down and it goes in front of you and it's like, this member's about to quit. And you call them up.
It is. Well, I mean, ultimately, that's the goal. I mean, I'm with you. Like, I feel like ultimately that's the goal, is to like mind read, the marble and know. But I mean, I think there are a lot of signs you can tell. I mean, first of all, there always is like the, the telephone, as in like, the 1970s gossip telephone. And, we really try to keep our finger to the pulse of that, because you guys know how it is at a gym. I mean, especially when like the conspiracy theory stuff comes up. And in fact, I will say that we have purposely not tried to keep certain members. In fact, we just sort of almost encouraged a guy to go, because he had gotten into this sort of negativity loop and a lot of complaining. And then we felt like he was poisoning other members. And we had a bunch of talks with him, and we tried to address his concerns. We tried to let him know which of his concerns we couldn't address and why. But none of it really, like, he just had gone into like a dark space. And so, we've had plenty of clients like that who actually were glad when they leave, because they're sort of taxing the vibe of the gym. And at some points, like, not every client is worth keeping.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say something about that earlier, and I think we just moved on to another topic. But when we were talking about just like internal drama and some issues with feeling like everyone's on the same team, that I think it's that in the past I've underrated how much one negative person, or one person who isn't even necessarily negative, but is like a vector for drama, where they themselves might not even be like complaining or whatever, but they'll just like, something will happen and they'll just pass it on in the wrong way to the wrong person. That actually just like removing a few of those people, either because they moved on themselves, they moved to a different city, or potentially they were asked specifically to like, hey, like, this isn't going to work anymore. that I've completely underrated that in the past. And then after seeing that happen more than, 2 times, it's like, oh, like, one person can actually just really cause a lot of those problems.
They really can. And I think it's like, so I think it's so important for gym owners to realize that like they're actually, you've got to be aware of those people and not try to retain them. In fact, like the death knell of a San Francisco CrossFit client is getting a direct phone call from Kelly Starrett, because he doesn't really ever do that. And the only time he's ever actually called our clients is when he's calling them to be like, dude, you are a negative Nelly and you're causing a negative vibe in my gym, and it's really bumming me out. It hits home for those people who receive that call, for sure. But, at some point we're like, we don't need to have not every member is great. And, I think I don't want to digress again, and I wrote an article about this a few years ago, but I wrote this article called "The Customer is Not Always Right." And I think that's an important concept for gym owners to have, that, again, like while I've said over this podcast that it's really important to respond to customer issues and concerns, a lot of the time I get feedback from clients, I actually don't do what they're suggesting. I do tell them why I'm not doing it. And I want to make sure that they know that I don't just make decisions on the fly, that I actually really am thoughtful and I'm trying to make the right decision for a whole group. And often what might be good for one individual member isn't right for the group. But the other thing I'll say is that the role I see myself in as a gym owner is actually my clients are my staff. And the clients of our gym are my coaches and staff's clients, right? So I feel like my first job, and obviously if my staff has gone off the rails or doing something that's, of course, terrible, then, there's going to be a consequence for that and a talking to. But also, we've had a few situations over the years where, some clients have tried to throw my staff under the bus. And I definitely, those are situations where I see my staff as my client and I go in to protect my staff, even if it means I'm going to lose that client, because I think that's so important. I mean, we didn't even talk about staff retention, which is a whole other form of retention that's so important. But I think going into your business with that mentality that my staff is my clients and our clients are their clients, that really sort of sets up this hierarchy, I think, that works well for me anyway, mentally.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, a lot of what people will give as feedback is not necessarily the right way to approach a problem. Right, that they'll complain about something that kind of doesn't make sense, or they'll give you a suggestion that's kind of weird and obviously a bad idea. But that doesn't mean that there isn't something there, right? Where it's okay, why would you be saying this? Why are you telling me that this person in this class is always in your way and you're just mad about it? And you're I don't. I just
what's
don't
underlying that? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the coaches are not doing a good job of controlling the space in the gym during busy classes. That's the actual problem. The problem isn't this member screwing up your workout. The problem isn't this member disrespecting you by taking your dumbbells or whatever. Come on, that's stupid.
Right.
But if the coach doesn't do a good job of preemptively understanding, we have a lot of people, we're going to be short on space, we might run out of dumbbells, and get in front of that, then you start to have this problem. Okay, cool. How do we fix that?
Right. You're exactly right. Yeah.
Yep. Well, great. I think that that's probably a good spot to wrap it up, since we've gone well over our self-imposed time limit of about an hour for these interviews. So Juliet, people probably can find you on the internet in a lot of different places for a lot of different services.
Yeah.
What do you want people to do if they enjoyed your input and advice on operations and retention from this podcast?
Well, I mean, I'm on Instagram at Juliet Starrett. And I do post a lot of photos of my kids, so don't follow me there if you don't want to see my kids. I'm on Facebook. You can find me at mobilitywod.com and also at sanfranciscocrossfit.com. We also have a nonprofit called Stand Up Kids that we're really excited about, which CrossFit people can get behind and understand, and that's standupkids.org. So lots of places to find me, follow me. I've been doing a little more writing these days, so I'll be sharing all of the things I'm writing about on all my social media feeds.
And where is that writing going to be posted?
Is it
just going to be long Instagram captions? Or?
No, I've done some articles for Box Pro Magazine and Medium, and I'm going to be contributing to Thrive Global and probably a little bit more on Medium, and some other, I'm actually trying to do some businessy publications. So all that is to be continued.
Great. That sounds very exciting. You should consider posting that in one spot for all the people who still use RSS readers in the world, such as myself.
Yeah, I know. You can still go out there and find the old San Francisco CrossFit blog that's on Blogger. Remember nice. Blogger? Yeah. Anyway, that's still out there too. Anyway. Well, I really appreciate you guys having me on, and I appreciate your thoughtful questions and how you're thinking about, trying to help people get get better at running gyms. And I will say that it is so hard and could be lonely and frustrating. And, I think it is, anytime people can hear from, you guys and any of your guests to just sort of commiserate and get advice, it's so valuable.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing your knowledge. It was, I think it's going to be really helpful for our listeners, and it was helpful for me, and I'm sure Todd as well.
Yeah, I got some good ideas. I made a few notes as we were going.
I wrote down Airtable, so we're even.
There we go. Great.
Well, thanks again, guys.
Thanks for listening. We've compiled the action items, recommendations, and tools that we and our guests use into a cheat sheet that you can download at FromCoachToBusiness.com. Download that cheat sheet and you can have all that stuff in one convenient location. Check out the rest of the episodes in the season as well for some more actionable information on starting and growing your fitness business.